Very two dynamic and exciting ladies. But before we kick off, we'd like to set the stage a little bit with some opening remarks from Joram Skravin, who is the Director of Impact and ESG at FMO and who is one of our co-initiating and founding funding partners. Everyone, please welcome Joram.
Thank you, Carey. I'm so excited to be here again. Last year we were here as well. I think we had a great event. Catalysing private sector funding to female entrepreneurs in Africa. I think it's an absolutely essential thing to do. There's no shortage of ideas, I think, in the development finance sector to do so. Just to give two examples, I think we funded FinL in Ivory Coast, which is really a specialized financial institution for women in the agricultural sector, financing them, giving them insurance and special technical assistance with Dutch government money. And a very different program that we've done is the Nazira program with the European Commission, where we give guarantees to, for example, Axis Bank in Nigeria to de-risk them, to really go and push down into the smaller entrepreneurs in Nigeria. But I think it's actually very important that these ideas are grounded in reality, and I think that is what the Rallying Cry and the African entrepreneurs that they bring to the stage bring to us. And I was reminded yesterday about the sense of urgency we all have. It's Adaptation Day today, and my wife was relating a conversation she had with my 9-year-old son yesterday evening, actually, and he was bemoaning his fate. He said, "Mom, you know, I'm really worried because I and you know my friends, we will have to make these really difficult decisions when we grow up, because of you, actually, because the decisions that you're not taking today to deal with climate action." It's a pretty depressing conversation, and as she was relating it, it sunk into me that whilst he is thinking that as the next generation, actually in Africa, you're making these decisions today because climate change has arrived at your doorstep and is very real. So the urgency really is very high. The time is now, as the Rallying Cry likes to say. And I'm really excited to hear the real stories, and I hope that you're able to shift the narratives here at COP with solutions from the ground and ideas of how we in the development finance sector and the private sector can channel money effectively to the entrepreneurs who are actually bringing real life solutions today to the climate change that we're already seeing. So I'm going to hand over to you because you've got the ideas, and I'm very much looking forward to what's going to be, I'm sure, a lively discussion and certainly not a panel.
Thank you so much, Joram. All right. Well, as Joram said, he said we were here last year. Technically, we were not. We were in Glasgow, which is a really long way from where we are right now, just for the record. But, you know, it's interesting when you think about setting up these kinds of conversations. I think Joram's point about adaptation is important now. The timing element is now. We're seeing a lot of the youth voices coming into the picture now saying we need to think about our future. But normally when we're talking about catalyzing private sector investment and funding, we always start with the business case. We got to make the business case, say all the commercial investors. What is the business case for caring about gender or climate? Well, I heard it put yesterday, and I think one of the most succinct and beautiful ways that I've heard so far. And I've only had this for a day, so let me hope I get this out right. Okay, I'm going to try this. I heard from a gentleman named Hassan Alam yesterday, who is Egyptian. He said, "This is how I think about the business case. You need to think about the fact that the global economy has been subsidized for the last 15 or 20 years by the planet. And guess what? The planet is out of money. Therefore, we know we have our business case." So that's the premise. I'm just putting that out there now so we don't have to spend this whole panel talking about the business case because we don't need to do that anymore. We know the business case is here. It's now. So what is the Rallying Cry? Let me also set the stage for that too. The Rallying Cry is an ecosystem initiative designed to shift capital and narratives for private sector climate solutions. We're starting in Africa and agribusiness. at the intersection of climate and gender, and we play in this space of intersectionality intentionally. So why Africa? Why now? Well, Yoram already mentioned, climate is on Africa's doorstep. It's here, right? It's now. Africa is one of the continents the hardest hit and yet had the least to do with contributing to climate change. We look across this continent and we see a rapidly growing population. So we need to think about, where is the food security? Where are we going to be feeding these people, these families, as they're faced with climate impacts on their agricultural production processes? What we see is that many women are in the agriculture sector, unseen, unheard, uncounted, but they are there on the front lines of climate change, feeding their families and communities every day. Well, we are having a finance section, so we do need to include a few numbers, right? I need you to know that across the African continent, women face a $42 billion finance gap that their male counterparts in business do not. Further, for women in agribusiness, we're looking at a $15.6 billion gap for these women and their innovative solutions that no one's ever heard of. Not okay. So we've heard of billions of dollars this week, last year, all the years before, earmarked for climate and gender. But if you talk to these two ladies here and many thousands of other women like them, you will hear the story that, guess what? They didn't see any of it. It's not getting to the ground level. Capital providers that we have spent quite a lot of time talking to and engaging cite a lack of deals and opportunities, lack of gender and climate capacity. They have big volume targets. They have ticket size limitations. They can't go that small, and lack of on-ground presence. And that was especially exacerbated during COVID. Meanwhile, when we talk to people like Bupe, who you will meet in a moment, and Lelemba, they're saying, look, we're out here, we've got the ideas, we're innovating, we are coming up with ways to deal with climate change and adapt every day, and we're seeking capital to grow and scale. They're not looking for handouts. They're not saying we need help. They're saying we have solutions. We need capital to grow and scale, okay? So that's the context, right? And the rallying cry has stepped into the finance gaps as a catalytic intermediary. Two things, we're building pipeline and we're matchmaking those enterprises to capital, right? So what are we doing? We're shifting capital, as I just mentioned, by connecting deals to different types of capital providers. And the other part that I think is equally important is we're shifting narratives. Because the women on the ground that we're working with in Africa are saying, we need the world to know, okay, fine, in some cases we are victims of climate change, but we don't need that to be the leading message. We are actually the agents of change. We don't want to be seen as beneficiaries. We want to be seen as solutionaries. We are not the broken, poor woman selling tomatoes on the side of the road. We are not the woman standing in the field that's been decimated by drought and disaster with a baby on our back, looking hopeless. We are looking into the future. We are looking for partners, for collaborators who are with us on this journey. And the last piece that what we're doing is shifting climate leadership. We're saying the leadership that we've seen on climate, by the way, is how we got to where we are now. And we cannot have more of that. We need a different type of climate leadership by demonstrating the value and power of collaborative partnerships working across ecosystems with female-driven leadership qualities around cooperation and collaboration and listening and inclusivity. So we're here to take our seats at the table, and over here in the climate action stage, we are building new tables altogether. And so welcome. Thank you for joining us today at our table. So last year at COP, we talked about the potential of what could be possible when we look at value chain financing. And this year, we want to do a bit of a deep dive into one example of what already is possible, what is already happening. And we're going to start today in Zambia. And probably nobody knows much about Zambia. Probably not that many people in this room have even been to Zambia. But Zambia is important today. Zambia is a place where the world can learn a lot, all right? So we're going to build from the ground level up. Let's go to Zambia. I have two Zambians here, one living in South Africa, one still residing in Zambia. I'm going to start with Bupe, ground level. Bupe, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your business, Farm 23 Strawberry, and your climate ambitions.
Well, Carey, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. You can hear me? Okay. I sat here listening to you, and I had goosebumps because this is something that is so passionate to me, my business, my community, my country. So I'm very excited to be here. Farm 23 Strawberry Zambia is an organic farm. We are based in Lusaka, Zambia. It's in Lusaka province. And we have ventured into producing strawberries, which is a food product. So I'm in the food agribusiness. And I'll speak on my own behalf today and also on behalf of the many Zambian producers, food producers. So what we've done is we've gone into farming using our natural resources. In Zambia, currently, we have noticed that the past years, we've developed a habit, I'll call it a habit, of destroying the soil, where we have depleted the soil of the so many nutrients that are natural to grow a crop, to produce a healthy crop. So what we decided to do as a business is to go into it in trying to produce a healthy product that's both good for the environment and good for the human being. So what we've done is we've gone into training farmers. I will specifically speak about women. You know, I'm so passionate about women, so excuse me if I lean more on the women, because those are the people that I feel are more underprivileged in my community and the ones that carry the heaviest burden. So we discovered that we kept on producing products that are not healthy. And in turn, it was also affecting the environment. So what we went into is to use our forefathers' methods of farming. There's a farming practice in Zambia where we use compost and manure. And that's what we've gone back to. And slowly, in our own small way, we are actually now impacting that on other farmers. So I have built a network of women farmers, women farmer groups that I've trained into trying to heal the soil. So for me, it's more about healing the soil so that it's able to produce a healthy product for me, for you, and for the environment. So we are at that stage where business is growing, especially after COVID. We are now picking up, and we're here mainly to add our voice to the solutions of climate change. And we feel like if we are to amplify our message on how to heal the soil, how to regenerate the soil, we will be able to at least give a small percentage of the solutions of climate change. So we are here to learn, we are here to partner, we are here to collaborate with anybody who can help us innovate our business and move ourselves forward. So I'm really excited to be here and being part of the rallying cry, because you have actually come to us on the ground. So you were very right, Carey, when you said we've heard so many figures, we've heard so much has been put on the table, so many initiatives, but the impact is not really being felt on the ground. So I'm here literally to speak about the woman farmer who's on the ground, who's feeling the impact. Because we've heard figures, huge figures. We've heard table talks, we've heard round table meetings about the woman farmer, especially in Africa. But I think I'm here to amplify and also talk about what the real woman on the ground needs to scale up their business and improve. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, so there's Bupe setting the tone, obviously not having a boring panel today. Thank you, Bupe. I love how Bupe says we. And Prudence Mutunoota, last year when she spoke on the big stage at the UK COP level high presidency event on behalf of the rallying cry, she said, I'm here to speak on behalf of all the women who are not in this room. Bupe runs a network of women farmers. Before she came here, she reached out to them and said, ladies, What is it that we need to tell the world? Because women, this is what's really interesting about women's leadership, is never sole leadership. It's never about them. They are always bringing hundreds or thousands of other women along with them. So their story is your story is their story. And so that's a really important thing to remember when we're talking about adaptation and scale and thinking about the power of women and the ripple effect that they all create in their own leadership. I want to talk about powerful ripple effects. I've got one sitting here to my left, looking all demure and sweet, but okay, here comes the fire. Lelemba, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Empress Fund and your business, what your journey is on climate and your ambitions.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here to be part of this conversation. I always get goosebumps when I listen to Wupe because it reminds me about why we work so hard from our perspective in the finance industry. So I'm a gender lens fund manager, and we manage two funds that are focused specifically on investing in women entrepreneurs in Southern and Eastern Africa. One of them is the Enigma Ventures Fund, which is industry agnostic and invests ticket sizes of about $200,000 to $1 million. And the second one is the Empress Fund, which really looks at filling the gap for very early stage agri, climate, and clean energy businesses in Southern and Eastern Africa, where we noticed that there was a particular gap in the type of financing that they could access. And so in Africa, I'll say it upfront, Western ways of lending and of doing finance have failed women in Africa. We can't take the copy and paste method. It just doesn't work. Even simple things like, oh, we need proof of address in order to know where you live will not particularly work for a lot of parts of Africa because you won't even have a street name. But we know where everybody lives, right? And so sometimes you have descriptions like, Wupe lives in the corner, you know, with the big
village.
tree. Yes, you know, but that doesn't mean we can't find her. And so in finance, we've had to think about how can we innovate in ways that are culture specific and also context specific. We can't take the same methods that have failed African women for more than 30 years and feel like we're going to solve the problem, particularly for investment in women. The figures are huge, like 15 billion of a gap in the agri space. There's a 3 trillion gap also for investment towards businesses that don't fit your typical venture capital profile and will not have the collateral for lending. And guess who fits in that gap the most? It is women. Because culturally, we'll have property that will be listed in a man's name, even when you're married, for example. And so these are things we have to take into consideration when we start to think about financing for women, particularly in Africa. And so when we put together the Empress Fund, it was with that in mind, thinking about how can we innovate, how we invest, in ways which work for the women that we actually want to solve problems for. We had to think about the fact that they will not have collateral. And so what can we do in place of collateral? We know that they have revenues because they're building these strong businesses, which are great cash generators. And you can ask Wupe, if she knocked on the door of a bank, they wouldn't care that she's generating revenues. All they want is an asset, which is even more valuable than the money that she's asking for. And so for us, we created revenue-based instruments, but that were very specific to the unique context that looked at what is the opportunity ahead for the woman, how do her revenue patterns look like, because sometimes in industries like agriculture, there'll be seasonality, and you have to take that into consideration. Expecting her to pay money back when she's just planted her crop is unrealistic. And so how do we track our repayments to be in line with the seasonality of her business? And these are our solutions because we understand our context. And so when we're thinking about this in a more ecosystem-wide approach, we have to think about how do we create African-grown solutions to sort out African problems. And that's what we're trying to do from a finance perspective. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lelemba. Brilliant. So you're hearing from Lelemba, who is a fund manager, or what would you like to be called these days?
An investor.
An investor, right? So the reason why I trip on that and hesitate is because there's so many innovative finance vehicles and facilities that are now coming onto the scene, almost like a whole new asset class, if you want to call it that, right? It's not about the typical private equity. It's not about just straight up debt. There are lots of different blended approaches coming, innovative vehicles that are designed to meet and address the needs of these women-led agribusinesses and other types of sector enterprises where they are. And so the rallying cry is working with a range of different types of capital providers. And we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of international capital providers versus local capital providers and why this is important. We work a lot with FMO and their financial intermediaries that they're investing in at the ground level, right? That's a type of local capital provider, a commercial bank. And Yoram, I want you to be reflecting a little bit about the role of the DFIs and thinking about the different types of local capital provider support that can be given to drive these local solutions. But I want to just for a moment, take a moment, because, you know, it's Saturday. We're lucky I can speak at all, frankly. We did a survey, and you can read about this in our recently launched, this week, hot off the presses Thought Leadership Report, which you can access on our website, therallyingcry.org. We did a survey of over 100 women-led agribusiness enterprises across Zambia and Africa, and Kenya, sorry. Definitely Saturday. I would almost say Monday, except it's Saturday. I think it is. We did a survey of these women and asked them about the type of capital that they need or that they want. And after COVID, we saw that there was a really adverse response to debt. During COVID, they watched their friends, their families lose their homes, lose their property, lose their shirts when the banks came calling on their loans that they defaulted on during COVID when they lost their jobs. So there's a real allergic reaction to debt right now for a lot of women. And they don't trust banks. They really just don't trust the banks or understand the banks, nor did the banks give them the time of day, right? I was in Zambia talking to a banker about why they don't bank to women, and they were like, oh, they're just going to use the money to buy lipstick and handbags. I'm like, are you kidding me? That can't be the case. You know, and by the way, the woman I was working with to talk to the banks was a construction company owner. She was not interested in lipsticks and handbags for her business. So that was gross, really a gross misunderstanding of the situation there. The other thing that we learned is that a lot of these female founders are a little bit leery about equity. They don't want someone to come in and tell them how to run the business that they have scrimped and saved and borrowed from their families and their friends to get it off the ground. It's their business. They know exactly how to run it. They don't want international investors to come in and start messing around and telling them how to do things without understanding who they are. And a lot of the women that we talk to actually don't even qualify for equity because the ticket sizes are still wrong in a lot of these conversations. A number of women that we talk to are actually looking for grants, catalytic grant to kind of help them get to the next level. But at the same time, we see this dependence on grants that has been fostered over a number of years in different parts of the African economy that are not sustainable as a business model. And so we're saying, what is the capital then that these women need? What catalytic capital would help them grow and scale and make it to the next stage in their business development? And so that's where we spend a lot of time, is looking at the right types of fit-for-purpose catalytic capital. So you can read more about that in the report. I just wanted to mention it, but I think it's really interesting to understand the amount of conversation and capacity building that we actually need to have with women on the ground around their own financial literacy and what types of capital actually is coming online and is available for them increasingly. So Bupe, let's come back to you, right? You mentioned some of the way that you're farming your strawberries and how the business, you know, is poised to grow. What is the catalytic capital that you need to grow and scale and go to the next level? What's next for you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carey. You know, as you were mentioning about the types of finances that women need, we have a lot of discussions amongst the women groups, the women farmers, about how best to be helped. So I'll speak firstly about my business. For me, I've seen we are at a stage where we have comfortably settled on the market. We are stable on the market for the fresh fruit as suppliers to so many, and we have even ventured into supplying to our neighboring countries. So now we're at a stage of how do we innovate? How do we improve? How do we grow our product range? So we have put up a series of product ranges that we would want to venture into, and then we're starting with phases. We have started with the jam production first. So we have started with our strawberry jam production, and then through your organization and through Africa Trust Group, who are both here, I just wanted to paint a picture of how it trickles down to a woman like myself. If you see how they're sitting, if the conversation starts with Carey, it ends with Lelemba, who's closer to me on the ground level, and it ends with me, you can only imagine where it's going to go, especially in the hierarchy of women development skills. You find that she's there to help out funders, finds funders who are able to help Lelemba reach me, who's on the ground. So most of the typical problems we have with the financial institutions is where they don't listen to the ground. They put money on the table and expect you to take it in their conditions. But what if I fail to pay you back your money? What happens to my business? And what happens to the families of the workers I have who are dependent on a paycheck that I give them on a monthly basis? So really, we want financial solutions, investment solutions that are able to speak on the ground, to speak to the woman farmer on the ground. What are your challenges? What do you need to get to your next level? Because not all of us are on the same level. Not everybody is ready to scale up. Not everybody is ready to go into manufacturers of 5 product ranges at the same time. But we're at different levels. So if we are to be if somebody was to design a financial package for each stage of a business, especially in the food production, on how to scale up to the next stage, at the stage where they're at. So for me, firstly, is not to throw money on the table as an investor. I think the most important thing, firstly, is to educate me. Let me know how to move to the next stage. Through me telling you, I am at this stage, and my dream is this, and I want to move here. So if you come in and say, we have money, we want to invest it in this way, how do we do it? You will be able to listen to what I'm going to say and know how to structure that fund around my environment, and which I saw with these 2 organizations. They were able to come to me and say, look, what do you need to get to your next stage? As I said, their plans, put ahead. Every business has a long-term plan for their business to grow. So we were able to talk and they're able to say, okay, in this environment that you're in, this package that we have, this package that Africa Trust Group has, is able to fit in this section. So they are able, it's practically at my terms, how their money comes to me, or which direction it is invested to. So for me, it's really something that all the women need. We need you to come to our level, understand our business, understand where we want to innovate, and invest in the right places.
Thank you, Bupe. So, well, you heard it pretty loud and clear that if we want the right financial instruments and facilities and approaches, we need to listen. Come from a human-centric design approach to the capital requirements that are there on the ground, really listening to understand. And I think that's part of what the Rallying Cry does, is listens. We do a lot of listening, and I think that's also part of the climate leadership, frankly, that we need when it comes to this whole COP conversation, climate finance. We need to do a lot more listening, really listening to what's happening on the front lines of climate change. So, Bupe, yes, those are some of the challenges that you guys have faced in terms of accessing capital and what kind of capital you're looking for to be more catalytic. Lelemba, talk a little bit more about the Empress Fund approach and how your capital, and we talked about this the other day, can be so catalytic for Boupé. What Boupé didn't mention is that, well, let's just do this. This is very exciting, right? We have managed to make a deal happen between these two ladies, bringing them together. We have shifted capital from Lelemba to Boupé, which is catalytic in terms of Boupé's ability to acquire a dehydrator, which is going to completely change her business. So Lelemba, let's talk through that. What are the practical elements of why your capital is so catalytic for women like Boupé and others in your portfolio?
So it was important for us when we set up the Empress Fund to be quite specific about what we were going to fund, because we wanted anything that we funded to be catalytic for the women's business, to boost them to the next level of growth and value addition, to ensure that when we put in that investment, it didn't just impact them, but created an even bigger value chain in the markets they were working in, and to hopefully even position them then for bigger funding, because they would have taken their business from point A to point B. And so when we look at each of the cases, for example, we wouldn't typically fund somebody who just comes and says, I need working capital finance because I've got a 3-month lag in my business. We look for the opportunities where it will actually unlock some real growth. And so with the example with Boupé, when she came to us, she had a clear vision about what she wanted as the next step. She had been producing strawberries and selling them fresh, but part of the process there was a lot of wastage because some of the strawberries would not come in the right shape and size for sale to the particular markets, and she wanted to be doing some value addition to these products, which is particularly important because then that means she can support even more farmers to produce strawberries because we have a wider range of products that she can produce. And a key feature she wanted to implement was to get in a dehydrator. She was already producing jams by the time we met her, but she wanted to bring in a dehydrator to create the next level of products and then impact even more farmers and bring them into her value chain. And that's exciting for us because we want to ensure that these are ticket sizes of $30,000 to $50,000, but these are ticket sizes that can create really huge ripple effects and really bolster a business in ways that you wouldn't imagine if you just think about it from the ticket size. And so her case was quite clear. We saw what the cost of the machinery would be. It fit the ticket size that we had, and we looked at her revenues. Already we had seen there was good growth, and we looked at a few projections as to if we do implement this hydrator, what does that mean for you as a business, but also then what does it mean for your value chain? How many more farmers can you add into your network as a result? And so for us, that's exciting. And so we mapped our financing to meet her needs. The dehydrator will take a couple of months to come into the country, to get set up and stuff like that. So we put up front a 6-month moratorium to give her the time to set this up and get started. And then we mapped it out to the revenues that she's mapped in her forecast to say, by the time I'm getting this harvest, this is how much I'll be dehydrating. This is where I'll be selling it. This is how much revenue I'll be getting. And we map out our repayments based on that revenue. And so it is a very deliberate conversation with our clients because we want to ensure that we're structuring it right for them. We are going down to see them, to touch them, to feel what they're doing, and really have these conversations to understand their business. Because without that context, we're not solving finance for women on the ground. And so her opportunity was particularly exciting. She was actually pushing us really hard about send the payment now, send the payment now. We've done all of the documentation, send the payment now. I'm traveling, Boupé. I have to press send, but I'm traveling. So she put us under pressure. And that's exciting because you know that this business person is actually ready for the money and she knows exactly what to do with it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I love how, Boupé, you're just laughing.
It's very interesting. You know, one thing she never mentioned is when this opportunity came across, I had already signed a contract to supply dehydrated fruit. So that's the business mind in me.
Without the dehydrator.
Without the dehydrator, I must mention.
You manifested
so
that.
when this opportunity came along, it was very easy for me to make a business decision of exactly where we wanted to inject the investment, because it was apparently close In fact, let me just say, it was exactly
It was the exact amount.
of money I needed to get the dehydration machine. So if that approach is, spread to other farmer groups, other farmer women who are into agribusiness and food production, if they can, the approach is to be approached in this way where they are able to meet them at their need, to meet them and feel it at the ground what they need. Because what I've noticed and seen is that there's investment funds being put across, but not really understanding which direction it should go to. It's like a general fund, you grab what you can and see what you can do with it. But if it's specific and we are able to be clear on where the money goes, how it's going to help the business grow, move from stage 1, 2, 3. So this approach for me with Africa Trust Group was very, very comfortable, first of all, because it was literally at my terms. They were able to come to me and say, look, if we're to give you so much, what are you going to do with it? I'll do this, and the revenue is this, and this is your return. So it's a very good opportunity. It's a win-win situation for both the investor and the business. So I'm really excited because, as you can see, we've even developed a more friendly approach. We talk and laugh about this all the time. Like, I signed an agreement without the dehydrator, and you came along. So let's do this. Thank you.
Well, and it could have been even closer than that, because obviously in the hunt for accommodation here in Sharm el-Sheikh, I was worried I was going to have the two of them sharing a bed, which is a little bit even more of a mix-up in the investor-investee relationship. So luckily we didn't have to go down that road. But listen, I mean, I think this is a really exciting example, and it is a smaller ticket size, right? When we're talking about $30,000 and we're thinking about the billions of dollar gap that needs to be filled, but it's an important example. We wanted to share it because look at these amazing women, right? And they're not the only ones out there like them. There are so many thousands of Bupes, and well, there's not as many Lelembas. We need 1,000 more Lelembas, frankly, but they are out there and they're coming. Right? And so we share this example, one, as a bright spot, because it's been pretty gloomy this week, and this whole climate conversation. What did somebody say? Yes, we're on a highway to climate hell. Okay. We wanted to share that this is a slightly brighter spot on the horizon. And there's a few things, right? There's Bupe, who is leading hundreds of women in her network, sharing her ideas about how to, drive more regenerative soil resilient farming. And she also is training thousands of women outgrowers to grow her strawberries and solidify her supply chain. She's thinking about ways to diversify her business. She's growing and she's scaling, and she needs the equipment and the processing. We need a lot more processing in agriculture across the African continent. And Lelemba is stepping in with the capital to make that happen. And so 30,000 this year is, where we're headed to get that dehydrator online. But there's going to be more capital requirements coming from Bupe and her team very quickly. And she's going to move up fast on that conveyor belt of finance to the next stage level of financing. The rallying cry, we focus on women looking for $25,000 to $250,000, right? And we tend to work at them at more of a cohort level. We often engage them with local commercial banks as a potential solution for some of the things that they're needing. Zanaco in Zambia has just announced and launched recently the first collateral-free loan with concessionalized lending rates for women in business, right? These are the kinds of partners that we need to be engaging. We're also looking at a group of women that are at that 250,000 to 3 million ticket size, and we're working with them closely to lead them, to work with investors like Lelemba. And on our team, we have skilled people who are bringing incredible experience to the table. We have Casey Klein, who is a reformed investment banker gone good, who sat down with Bupe for a morning, and we went through her finances together, step by step, and she told stories about her business that Casey could then translate into numbers, projections, revenue calculations, and understands her business so well that now, Bupe, you understand your business even better than you did before.
Yes, that's correct. I do. And that's one of the things that I would want organizations like yourselves to come to the ground for. It's the financial literacy aspect of it. We have the information, we have the knowledge, we are doing the work. But how do we, for me to be ready to move to my next level in business, I need to know how to get there. So if I don't understand how to use the money that you've given me, it will totally go to waste. So that's another aspect that I've noticed that was coming out a lot in the conversations that I had in my network, is how do we get the information to get ourselves investor ready? As you rightly said it, Carey, there's a lot of dependency on grants. I have gotten one before, but that's not the only solution for me to boost my business. I need to know about the other avenues. Who can I partner with? Who can help me to grow my business to the next level? So it's a lot of things to do, not only the money on the table, but we also need the information, we need the training, we need to understand what we need to move to the next level. Yeah.
Yes, and Lelemba, I mean, you've seen this as well in your business. You're not just providing capital. What are the other types of support mechanisms, if you will, that you are providing to the women that you're investing in?
Yeah. Investor readiness has definitely been a key factor, and this includes everything from, being able to read your own financial statements and how that works, because whilst you might have a bookkeeper, it's important for you to understand your business from the numbers as well. It's everything to how do you communicate with investors, do you create a pitch deck, how do you think about your market and the market that you're actually serving, how does your product fit a particular problem and is creating a solution for that. And for us, it's been interesting working with women, because women are very solutions oriented. And so they will see a challenge in the communities and immediately rush to solve it, and then kind of get stuck because it's like, I'm at the next stage and I need to grow and I'm not sure what to do next. And so creating this type of support structures around them is super important. It really is about capacity building before the investment, and also then, walking hand in hand after the investment. So we're not the type of investor that says, here's the money, good luck. Hopefully you come back with 3 times as much, or we come and take your farm. We really treat it as a partnership. We have monthly meetings with them where we're talking about any of the bottlenecks that they might be facing. We have quarterly strategic planning sessions where we take a more big picture look. And just next week, actually, we're bringing together the cohort from the Empress group, which is 8 of them, to Cape Town for a leadership development process, which is really focusing on them for a change. Women are really like workhorses in Africa. And so we're always thinking about everybody else but ourselves. And it's time to just take them out of their business, help them think about themselves a little bit more and what they need to develop, and think more on the business and not just in the business as well. So it's all of that support. It's very holistic, and that matters, because when we're investing, we're just not investing in the business and the product, we're actually investing in the person. Yeah.
Beautiful. Look at that's pretty inspiring, and I think we need a lot more of that. And I think that's a good point to sort of dive a little deeper on, which is the need for more of this holistic approach. Again, thinking at the ecosystem level. You're looking at Bupe and her ecosystem. Bupe, you're looking at your ecosystem of your outgrowers, the women that you're engaging and supporting in terms of their climate journeys and ambitions. And I think that's where it gets really interesting. And thinking about, for us, the rallying cry, we're talking to a lot of the entrepreneur support organizations who are running these, venture builders and incubators and accelerators, promising these women and these SMEs they're going to come out investor ready, and they don't get capital. Yeah. So we're saying, well, how can we actually step in and bridge some of that gap between the capital and the enterprises and smooth that road and that journey? And I think we're really excited about that. Now, what's not exciting for me, and I have no idea how this has happened, we are almost to the end of our session, which is amazing how fast this has gone for a Saturday morning. I hope you guys are awake still. I would just like to ask, before Yoram is going to kind of talk to us a little bit about what are some of the key takeaways that he's hearing today, as well as reflect on the role of DFIs in this ecosystem. Were there any questions that any of you had for Bupe or for Lelemba where you'd like to know a little bit more or push on something? And it's okay. I mean, if everybody's sort of still just kind of in their Saturday morning chill mode, that's all right. But I thought it would be the kind and generous thing to offer. Yes? And say your name, where you're from.
Hello, my name's Charlotte. I actually work for Climate Action. I wanted to ask how education of women, young girls or women, feeds into the bigger picture of them running businesses. I'm asking because I actually have I have a relation she's actually gone to Zimbabwe quite recently, and she actually has been training teachers in terms of business management. And I just would be really interested to know how you see that happening in the education sector and it feeding into women in the sort of working in the business sector.
I guess that was for me. Yeah, thank you. It's interesting that you asked that question because just last night, I think, the team and myself were having a discussion about how this has impacted my business, has impacted my community especially. And I was telling them a story about, by the way, 80% of my staff are women. And in my country, there's a lot of early marriage arrangements happening. So you'll find that at the end of the day, a young girl who's as little as 14, because when Carey and her team came to visit my farm, one young girl who's now 17 caught their attention, and she works with me. And they reminded me to say, look, that little girl, how is she doing? She was good. She was funny and all that. And I started telling them a story about how she's gone back to school because of her payday. When she gets paid, she gets to be in an environment where there's somebody who's able to impact her positively. So with the women that I work with, I first of all understand the level of education they've gone up to. For them to get to be where they are and the situation they're in, what is going on. I must mention, I'm a social worker by profession, so automatically it drives me there. So I quickly understand what their challenges are and sort of understand at which level they can start with school. So far we have 4 women that are going into school, back to school, while working, still running a home. So for me, it's an achievement to see that, because I know when they're done with their school, they won't be at the level they are today. So for me, it's a ripple effect. If I am well equipped to run my business, then I'm well equipped to take care of my community, especially the women. So I am a living example of women who are actually benefiting from my business by going to school. I was telling the team to say my first woman, she's the longest serving at my company. She's actually graduating high school next year. And for me, that's an achievement. And I was making them laugh. I was like, I want to make a big deal out of it. I want to do a party of some sort for her so that it can motivate the others to join in and, get the interest. Because it's not all of them who are interested, because they feel they're done. They're married, they're done. That's the end. I'm for babies and working, that's it. But I'm trying to bring it on board to see that they see the value in themselves, that they can do better than where they are. So definitely we are incorporating education and the women development in our business here.
I just want to clarify something. The woman that you said is the longest standing at your company who just finished high school, that doesn't mean that she started when she was 7 and you've been doing child labor. You're saying she went back.
No. Let me clarify
I just
that.
want to clarify.
So she came to me and started working for me when she's actually 27.
See,
So
just
she's
wanted
been
to clear the
working
record.
for about 6 years. So we must make that clear. It's not like she started at 7 and then no. But I was able to understand when she started working for me, I was able to understand at what level of education she ended at. So in my country, she ended at grade 4. I don't know what, 4th grade. That's where she ended. So for me, it was easy to understand and know how to sponsor her into our junior school, at what level she starts from. So she completed her junior school, and now she's in high school, completing next year. So it's that impact that we're trying to put across.
Thank you. It's a great question. And I think part of it is general education, right? There are some gaps. But I also think when you talk about education, for me, that also means thinking about more of this financial literacy, having more confidence about numbers and about bookkeeping and about business. I think another thing that we're seeing, not just in Zambia, but across the African continent, is this need to educate and build capacity of women to see farming as a livelihood, as a business, not just about growing food to feed their families, but that this is a commercial opportunity. And Bupe, I think, has been really great about really encouraging her women outgrowers to build their businesses and to actually create commercial opportunities. I'm getting timing thingies going off. I see hands kind of going up, and I've got Yoram here queued up. So unfortunately, what I am going to do, just because I need to respect the climate stage's time schedule and all the other events that are lined up here today, I'm going to actually invite Yoram back up to the stage to give us a little bit of an overview of what are the key things that you heard today and that you want to take away from here. And then maybe I'll finish up on one or two last call to actions. And then I think Tess will wind up in the time frame that you have allotted for us.
Thank you, Carey. It was a very insightful session. Maybe to start at the meta level, what I took away is a reflection on the just transition, which is something that at FMO we care deeply about and want to facilitate, and I think is also a core theme of this COP. And I think we've had a lot of attention to the just part of that transition, which I think we have a moral obligation together to deliver on. There is, however, a challenge, and I think this discussion brought that out. The more you focus on trying to get people to deliver on the just part by explaining the suffering and the victimhood that comes with it, which is typically quite a good way to drive donor money, because it likes to flow towards where the needs are greatest. It does create some challenges for the investment side, because as Lalemba, I think, articulated quite well, investment flows to success, to really powerful individuals, actually, successful businesses. So I think it's also very important, if we want to scale that money that needs to flow into adaptation, resilience in Africa, that we bring success stories forward. And that to me is an important takeaway of the work that we're doing here, because I think we have really successful stories on the stage here, and that deserve investment. So I think that at the meta level is the reflection. We need to show that this is an investable space, and I think it is. And then we need to actually listen. I think that's another big takeaway. How do we empathize and listen carefully to what is really needed on the ground? Western finance has failed women, as you said. We cannot expect to solve the problems that are arriving at our doorstep tomorrow with the solutions of yesterday. And I think that has come through loud and clear. So let me round off then with a little reflection of one of the ladies in my close vicinity, because like Pupe, I like to ask the ladies around me what I need to do, and in this case, again, I asked my daughter Maya, who is 4, what I should be saying at the COP today. You may be wondering why are we going to learn something from a 4-year-old? But I find actually that children have a very neat way of driving things right down to the essence. So I asked her, what should I do? What should I say at COP? And she said, because COP is about climate change, of course. And she said, Dad, you got to ask them to stop the climate change. I said, that's great, I'll do that. She said, but Dad, what is climate change? And to me, that's lesson 1. Maya's first lesson is, as we get to this point, this is the implementation COP. It's no longer about the science is unclear, let's figure things out and then maybe figure out what to do. No, you act first and then you start to figure out, because we need to act now. And I think that is exactly also the message that you've been giving. And I did enjoy hearing that whilst we need to do things very differently in finance, some things are the same at every level, and that is, get me that disbursement yesterday. So that's the first lesson of Maya. The second lesson of Maya was, as I explained climate change and we got the temperature changes, etc. She said, oh, but Dad, I really like warm. I thought, that's a problem. And then she reflected a bit further. She said, no, but the animals, they don't like worms. So you have to tell them to stop climate change because the animals don't like worms. Now, that to me is the second lesson of Maya. We need a giant leap of empathy for other people and in fact other species to solve for this problem. And I think again, that was also your main message. We need real empathy at the micro level, really understanding deeply what it is that the businesses on the ground, the female entrepreneurs need, and what kind of new financing solutions we'll need for that. And we need empathy at that macro level, because that will bring us the just part of the just transition. So I've really enjoyed listening to the transition part of the just transition in this conversation, and I hope that we can find very creative ways to scale your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joram. So yes, we need more transition and we need more acceleration of the transformation. So my final, I guess, call to action to everyone here in this room who is watching virtually and everywhere else, invest in women on the front lines like Bupe. Invest in the women investing in them like Lelemba. And invest in the solutions that the world needs to tackle these two twin issues of gender and climate. And even if we are on a climate highway to hell, we are stubbornly optimistic about the as yet unlocked potential of half the planet to lead the change that we need today. So this is the final word from the rallying cry on this stage today, not here at COP, but we say this is our planet, our legacy. The time is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carey. And just a few words. Thank you so much for this inspiring session. I just want to share the word of Wanjira Maathai. She was on stage with us a few days ago. And Wanjira Maathai is the CEO of the World Resource Institute in Africa. And she said exactly what you said, Jeroen. It's a crisis of empathy and of human connection. And she also said that if leaders in Africa and elsewhere in the world don't push for a drastic reduction in the cost of capital to allow people to take out loans for, in the case of our conversation, for a clean energy transition, people will stay vulnerable, stalled indefinitely by poverty, unable to join global market and lead their own green revolution. So I think this whole issue of access to finance at a fair price is very much front and center in this discussion at COP, and that's what we need to push, continue to push for. So thank you very much, Carey. Thank you very much, all of you, for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you to the Kite team for hosting us.